Welcome to Sacred Things. This series of videos is dedicated to sharing truths that the Lord made real to me and helped me to live out as I went through the devastation of sexual sin in my marriage. I call them sacred because they came to me as I cried out to God for the wisdom I so greatly needed during that difficult time. My desire is that you will find hope, direction, practical answers, and spiritual insight into how to deal with and live with a man addicted to sexual sin.
I think that the title of this video alone is probably enough to spark some real interest for a wife, because pornography and sexual sin and all that is such an intensely personal betrayal that the question would have to arise, what's wrong with me? But you're saying that the woman is not the problem. Can you provide some proof?
Again, I want to refer to my own testimony because I went through it. I'm assuming lots of people go through the same thing, the same emotion, feeling like I was a young, pretty woman, nothing wrong with me, and yet here's my husband visiting prostitutes, going to massage parlors, looking at magazines. And yeah, the question was, why? Why? What is wrong with me? And as I discovered as time went on, the problem wasn't me. I wasn't the issue. The issue was my husband's intense addiction to sex. And when a man becomes so addicted, it's like they cycle through different aspects of the addiction. I'll use Steve as the example. How do you even talk about this stuff? It's just very difficult. One week it would be Asians. The next week it would be blondes. The next week it would be brunettes. The next week it would be whatever. It would just be this thing of variety for some men. The other thing is just, Steve used this example in his book, I believe, in Sexual Idolatry. He used the example of guys in the fast lane sexually. And they just are so addicted to out of the normal sex. So your little cute wife at home just is not what they are watching on the internet.
Yeah, but if she was that person, would he then be okay?
Temporarily. It still wouldn't be enough. That would run out. Again, I'll refer to my own testimony. My husband, I didn't share this in my testimony, I didn't go this far in depth in my testimony about this, but I shared that I actually got involved with other people with him. And that was, for him, heaven on earth for about a month. And then I found out he was going to massage parlors and prostitutes.
Still wasn't enough.
Never enough. It's never enough. And it had nothing to do with me. I was not his problem. The problem was the level of lust in him, and the fantasy life in him was so over the top. And a single person is not enough to satisfy that beast. I could be drop dead gorgeous, which I wasn't, but if he had drop dead gorgeous babes around him, eventually that would not be enough. It's not me. I wasn't his problem. The problem was in him, and the problem was this: he just unleashed this lust and fantasy life in himself. And so, yeah, that's why they do it. That's why you may feel like you're not enough, but that's not true. If he were living in not the fast lane, but the normal, slow lane with his wife, the wife of his youth, as life should be, it's exhilarating. It is awesome. the way it's supposed to be between a man and a woman is tremendous. But for him to go from the fast lane, out of all that fantasy, all that lust, all that drivenness, all of that, he's got to go from that over here. It takes time.
Yeah, I was wondering what you would say to a woman who she's maybe thinking about getting surgery, or she's thinking about buying certain lingerie that she thinks is going to excite her husband, or doing certain things, learning things about sex in order to satisfy. What kind of damage is that going to do then?
Well, it comes in levels. It really depends on the guy and how deep he is into it. I would say this. I'd start off by saying this, that if you are contemplating pornography to spice things up, that is like you couldn't do a worse thing. Basically what you're doing is you're approving of his lustful, fantasy-filled life. You're saying, go for it. And that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go for it, and he's going to leave you in a trail of dust. Lingerie, if you and your husband were in the slow lane, would be fine. If you guys are in the slow lane together, there isn't much I would say you couldn't do, because you are in love with each other. He's not craving something that he had in the fast lane over here. So, but there are definite limits. I'm not going to get into all the stuff, but I would just say that if he is enjoying you and you guys are building a relationship, I wouldn't be afraid to enjoy my husband, except for the whole idea of bringing in video, pornography, pictures, anything like that that's going to fuel the lust and the fantasy, kill it.
So that's really the problem, is that there's nothing you can do to solve the lust problem.
No, surgery is not going to help him.
Yeah.
And it's not going to help you either. It's just another way. Be very careful how I say this. I want to say it with a degree of humility. There are some women who have to have surgery for medical reasons, but that is just, it's a personal thing. It's a very personal thing to get surgery. But if you're using surgery as a method to turn his head back to you, you are going to be very disappointed, because that is not the problem. You are not his problem.
What would you say to someone who has been told by a well-meaning friend or pastor or something along those lines that if she had given him more sex, then he never would do the things that he's doing?
It is a very powerful drive in a man. And if a woman is just like completely cutting him off, I would not blame the wife for the husband's behavior. I wouldn't say that you're not having sex with him, so therefore he has the right to go out and get it somewhere else. I'd never say that. I don't believe that. But I would say this, that you're asking for problems. You are asking for trouble. To the people who would say to a wife that she didn't give him enough sex, a woman who is being intimate with her husband, and some person in her life is saying, if you would have done this and this and this, this wouldn't have happened. That is a lie. What do you think sex is for? It's like, man, how far off the trail do we have to go to satisfy lust?
Okay, how do you fight this nagging thing? If I was just blank, this wouldn't happen. Because it's there, and it's going to constantly be there.
Part of it is knowing your husband. And I think that was a big, big thing for me. And I know it's a big thing for lots of women. Lots of women would love it if their husbands would just talk to them.
Yeah.
That's what Steve did for me. We had some really frank conversations, and I needed it. I wanted it. I appreciated it. He would tell me what goes on inside and what was pulling him, why he kept going back to it. And, so I started to get it. it was more than just this guy off on a tangent.
Right.
It was something hooked him.
And bigger than just, well, if you really wanted to stop, you would just stop.
Right. And I did say that to him. I have had that question, not just that question, that demand. It's like, if you didn't want to do it, just quit doing it. But it wasn't like that. And I had to learn that if it were that simple, and this is what I learned about Steve, of all the people I have ever known, this is all encompassing up to this day, I haven't met anybody who has the level of self-discipline and desire to be right. So once he repented, I started seeing those characteristics in him, and I started to realize if he had that kind of power to flip a switch, he would have done it. This thing was bigger than him. It was much bigger than him, and he needed a lot of help. And so when I started to realize that, when I started to understand the power of the addiction, it gave me a lot more empathy and sympathy for him and willingness to battle with, go through the battle with him instead of battling him. So you don't just flip a switch and turn it off. I wish it was that easy, but it's not that easy.